If you told me last year that I'd end up living with my best friend's older brother and falling for him, I would have laughed in your face. But life has a weird way of setting you up for situations you think you're ready for until you're actually in them. It started when Julian, my best friend since freshman year, asked if I'd split an apartment with him for senior year. We'd been tight for years, late night study sessions, road trips, covering for each other during bad dates and worse hangovers. We were that kind of close. No awkwardness. No hidden feelings. Julian's older brother, Ethan, was someone I knew mostly through secondhand stories. He'd already graduated, had bounced between jobs, and ended up back in the city after a breakup. Julian always talked about him like he was this impossible mix of cool and annoying, laid back, a little messy, overly confident. So when Julian said Ethan would be crashing with us for a little while, I didn't think much of it. Until I opened the door on move-in day and saw him standing there, duffel bag slung over his shoulder, curls slightly damp like he'd just stepped out of the shower, and wearing a hoodie that looked like it hadn't been washed since 2019. "Hey," he said, flashing a lazy grin. "You must be Theo." "Yeah," I replied, trying not to stare. "You must be very not temporary looking." He laughed. "Don't worry, I'll try not to trash the place." I wanted to believe that. But the first week, chaos. Ethan left dishes in the sink, took phone calls on speaker at 1 a.m., hogged the bathroom for what had to be skincare rituals he'd never admit to. He had a way of filling up every corner of the apartment, like the air shifted when he walked into a room. It was annoying, and somehow, weirdly magnetic. One night I came home from a late shift at the coffee shop to find him passed out on the couch, hoodie riding up just enough to reveal a sliver of his toned stomach. The TV was still playing, some documentary about whales or something. I was standing there, frozen, holding my keys, when he stirred. His eyes opened, bleary. "Hey," he mumbled. "You're late." "You're on my couch," I shot back, trying to sound pissed and not completely unhinged. He didn't move, just patted the cushion next to him. "Sit, you look dead." I should have gone to my room, showered, slept. But instead, I sat close enough to feel the heat from his body, but not touching. Not yet. That was the first night. It wouldn't be the last. It became a pattern after that night. Me coming home late. Ethan camped on the couch. Sometimes asleep, sometimes awake, and scrolling through his phone with the TV humming in the background. He'd lift his head, eyes still hazy, and say something like, "You working yourself to death again?" Or, "Want a beer?" Most nights I'd say no, but once I said yes. That was the night everything started to shift. He handed me a bottle, our fingers brushing. We didn't say much. Just sat there in the dim glow of the living room, the sounds of the city leaking through the windows. I could feel his presence like gravity, pulling at the parts of me I thought I'd buried deep enough not to feel this kind of thing again. We didn't talk about anything serious. Just music, dumb things Julian used to do as a kid, the nightmare that was our kitchen faucet. But there was something in the way he looked at me, like he was trying to figure me out. And maybe he was. "You're quieter than I expected," he said at one point. I shrugged. "You're louder than I expected." He laughed, and it hit me how nice it was to hear him laugh like that. Unfiltered, like he wasn't trying to be cool. "You always this tense?" he asked, his eyes flicking over me. "Only when I'm sharing a bathroom with someone who uses all the hot water." He smirked. "So I stress you out?" "You have no idea." The air felt heavier after that. Not in a bad way. Just charged. Like there was something neither of us was saying, but both of us were thinking. A few days later, Julian had to go out of town for the weekend. Family thing. I didn't ask questions. I was just grateful for the quiet. Or at least I thought I was. Friday night, I came home from work, fully expecting the apartment to be empty. but Ethan was there. Again. He'd cooked, if you could call microwave Trader Joe's pot stickers cooking, and was halfway through a bottle of red wine. "Look at that," he said, raising his glass. "Now we've got the whole place to ourselves." Something about the way he said it made my pulse kick up. I kicked off my shoes and sat down across from him, suddenly hyper-aware of every sound, every inch between us. "You trying to get me drunk?" I asked, only half joking. He tilted his head, studying me. Wouldn't have to try very hard. I stared at him, unsure whether he was flirting or just being Ethan. The line had blurred so much, I couldn't tell anymore. "You always like this with your roommates?" I asked. He leaned forward, voice lower now. "Only the ones I like." The room got quiet, tense. I looked away, heart thudding against my ribs, unsure how to respond. Before I could say anything, Ethan got up to pour more wine, and just like that, the moment passed. But the tension? It stayed. Later that night, I was brushing my teeth when he came into the bathroom behind me, shirtless, towel slung around his neck. Our eyes met in the mirror, and for a second, neither of us moved. He stepped closer, reaching for his toothbrush, and I swear, our shoulders touched on purpose. "You good?" he asked, like it was the most casual question in the world. "Yeah," I said, but it came out quieter than I meant. He smiled. "Cool." He brushed his teeth, right next to me, shirtless, quiet, and somehow more intimate than anything I'd felt in a long time. I couldn't sleep that night. And in the morning, everything would change again. I tried to play it cool the next morning. Emphasis on tried. Ethan was already in the kitchen, shirt still off, hair messy, pouring cereal into a bowl like nothing was weird. Like he hadn't stood inches from me in the bathroom last night, our bare arms brushing, his cologne still clinging to the space between us. "Morning," he said, nodding toward the coffee pot. "I made a fresh batch." I mumbled a thanks, pouring myself a cup, pretending like I hadn't barely slept. He moved around the kitchen like he belonged there, which, technically, he did. But it was messing with my head. He'd lived with us for a few weeks at that point, and everything about his presence had become dangerously familiar. Too easy, too close. I was halfway through my coffee when he leaned against the counter, watching me. "So what's the plan today?" I blinked. Laundry? Maybe grading some essays." "You sound like the poster child for excitement," I smirked. "Some of us can't live off vibes and leftover pot stickers." He laughed again, and I could feel it ripple through me in a way I wish I could ignore. He grabbed his cereal and walked over to the couch, flopping down like a cat that owned the place. "Want to take a break later? Go get some air? There's that park a few blocks over." I hesitated. "You asking me on a date?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What if I was?" He said it like a joke, but the way his eyes lingered on mine, calm, unreadable, testing, made my throat go dry. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't have to. Julian came back that Sunday night. And just like that, the house didn't feel like mine and Ethan's anymore. The air reset. The invisible current between us, charged and humming, flattened, but not entirely. Late one night, about a week later, I was up editing a piece for class when I heard a knock on my door. It was Ethan. He didn't say anything at first, just leaned against the frame, looking tired and a little disheveled, like he hadn't planned to be there. "Can't sleep?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "You mind if I hang out for a bit?" I should have said something. Asked why. Told him this wasn't helping either of us. But I didn't. I stepped aside, let him in, and watched as he sat on the edge of my bed like it was the most natural thing in the world. We talked. About nothing. About everything. And at some point, I stopped pretending I didn't want this. "I keep thinking about that night," I said, after a pause so long it could have been mistaken for silence. Ethan looked over. "Which one?" "The couch," the wine, the way you looked at me." He didn't move, didn't look away. "I wasn't imagining that, was I?" I asked. He shook his head, voice low. "No." The room got quiet again, except it wasn't uncomfortable, just suspended, like we were hovering over the edge of something. "Why haven't you said anything?" I asked. He ran a hand through his hair. "Because Julian's your best friend. Because I didn't come here looking for this. And honestly, I didn't know if I could trust myself around you." I stared at him, heart racing. "Can you now?" He didn't answer. Just leaned forward, slowly, like he was giving me a chance to stop him. I didn't. The first kiss wasn't planned. It wasn't even dramatic. It was slow, almost cautious, like we were both waiting to be told we couldn't. But no one said anything. The world just paused. Ethan's lips met mine in a way that felt tentative at first, like he was still figuring out whether I wanted this. I did. The kiss deepened, hands moving instinctively, his to my jaw, mine to the back of his neck. And just like that, the months of tension between us snapped like a wire pulled too tight. Every quiet glance, every brush of the arm, every lingering stare, it all came rushing in. When we pulled back, neither of us said a word for a few seconds. The silence wasn't awkward, it was loaded. His eyes were darker now, more serious. "That probably complicates things," he said, voice low. "Yeah," I whispered, "a little." He swallowed, like he wasn't sure what came next. "Do you regret it?" I shook my head. "Do you?" Ethan paused. Then, softly, "No." He stayed that night. Nothing else happened. We didn't even sleep under the covers. Just lay on top, side by side, not touching, both staring at the ceiling like we didn't just alter the foundation of our lives. The next morning, we acted normal. Kind of. Julian was in the kitchen, cooking eggs, oblivious to the fact that the two people closest to him were now keeping a secret between them. Ethan and I kept our distance, but not enough. I could feel his gaze slide to me when he thought Julian wasn't looking. I did the same. It was stupid, dangerous, but we were both in too deep. That night, Ethan came to my room again. There were no excuses this time. No, can't sleep, or just hanging out. We didn't talk. We just kissed again. Slower this time. More sure. His hands tangled in my hoodie. Mine found the waistband of his sweatpants. I was shaking a little. Not from nerves exactly, but from how intense it all felt. It wasn't just about attraction. It was something else. Something messier. He pulled back after a minute, breathing hard. "I don't want to screw this up." "You already kissed me," I said. "We're a little past that." Ethan smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You know what I mean," I nodded. "So don't." We didn't sleep much that night. There was a lot of kissing. A lot of lying there in the dark. Listening to each other breathe, our legs tangled, our fingers brushing in the space between questions we weren't ready to ask. Like, what are we doing, and what happens if Julian finds out? Because that was the thing neither of us wanted to say out loud. We were playing with fire. Julian trusted both of us. And if this came out, if he found out his best friend was sneaking around with his older brother, it wouldn't just be awkward. It could destroy everything. For a while, we lived in a kind of secret routine. Ethan would wait until Julian went to bed or left for class, then slip into my room for a few stolen hours. We didn't talk much about what we were doing. Maybe we were scared to. Maybe naming it would make it feel too real, and then we'd have to deal with it. But in those quiet, hidden moments, it didn't feel like a hookup. It felt like more. He'd lie on his side, watching me with this softness that made my chest ache. He learned how I took my coffee. He'd remember things I said in passing and bring them up later like they actually mattered. Once, I woke up to find a post-it note on my laptop. "Don't forget your essay deadline today. You got this." He was thoughtful like that, quietly so. But hiding it, that was exhausting. One night, Julian invited a bunch of friends over for a game night. The apartment was packed, cards on the coffee table, beer cans piling up, everyone yelling over each other. Ethan and I kept our distance. But at one point, we locked eyes across the room, and it hit me how badly I wanted to just walk over and kiss him in front of everyone. How tired I was of pretending nothing was going on. Later, after everyone left, I was in the kitchen rinsing out Solo cups when Ethan came up behind me. He didn't touch me, didn't even speak, just stood close enough that I could feel him. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I nodded, just tired. He lingered for a second, then said, "Come to my room later?" "I'll text you," I said, too aware of Julian still awake down the hall. But I didn't text. Instead, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling this weird mix of guilt and longing. I wanted Ethan. That wasn't the problem. The problem was I wanted him for real. I wanted to wake up next to him without sneaking around. I wanted to talk about what we were. I wanted to be something. And I didn't know if he wanted that too. The next day, I skipped my shift and went for a walk. It was freezing out, but I needed air, needed space to think. I ended up at this little park a few blocks away. I sat on a bench for over an hour, phone in hand, debating whether to text him, just to say we need to talk. I didn't. Not then. Instead, I came home to find Ethan in the kitchen, headphones in, sleeves rolled up, washing dishes like we were an actual couple. I stood in the doorway, watching him for a minute, heart pounding. He looked up, smiled. "Hey, you disappeared earlier." "I went for a walk," I said. "Had to clear my head." He turned off the water, drying his hands on a towel. "About us?" I blinked. "What? You don't think I know you well enough by now?" he said, voice quiet. "I've been waiting for the shoe to drop." I stepped closer, heart in my throat. "Do you want this, Ethan? Really want it? Or is it just something to pass the time until you move out?" He looked at me, and for a second I thought he'd deflect, make a joke, shrug it off. But he didn't. "I don't want to move out," he said. "Not if it means walking away from this." That stopped me cold. "I wasn't expecting you," he went on. "I didn't come here thinking I'd fall for anyone, let alone my little brother's best friend. But I did. And I don't want to pretend anymore." I stared at him, pulse roaring in my ears. "Then don't," I said. "Let's stop pretending." He took a step closer, like he wanted to kiss me right there in the kitchen, but we heard the sound of Julian's door creak open down the hall, and we both froze. We weren't there yet, but for the first time, it felt like maybe we could be. We didn't plan for Julian to find out the way he did. I wish I could say we sat him down like adults and told him everything. That we explained how it started, how it got serious, how it wasn't just some random hookup. But that's not how it happened. What happened was a door, my door, half shut when it should have been fully closed. A morning when Julian got back early from his gym run, and Ethan, still in my bed, arm flung over my chest, both of us fast asleep. I woke up to the sound of a bag dropping and Julian's voice saying, "What the hell?" Everything after that was a blur. Ethan jolted awake, sat up, hair wild, mouth open like he wanted to speak. I jumped out of bed, pulling on a hoodie, panic rising in my chest like a wave I couldn't outrun. "Julian, wait." He was already backing out of the room. His face was unreadable, blank in that terrifying way people get when they're feeling too much to show any of it. "I'm gonna go," he said, his voice flat. "No, please. Can we talk?" I stepped toward him. He didn't move. "How long?" I hesitated. "How long, Theo?" His voice cracked, just a little. "Since a few weeks after he moved in," I said quietly. Julian shook his head like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You're my best friend, and He turned to Ethan, who is now standing beside me, quiet. "You're supposed to be my brother, man." Ethan didn't defend himself. He didn't try to justify it. He just stood there, still and heavy. Julian didn't say another word. He walked out, grabbed his keys, and slammed the door behind him. The silence afterward was unbearable. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my stomach in knots. Ethan crouched in front of me, resting a hand on my knee. "I'm sorry," he said. "This is bad," I whispered. He looked at me like I betrayed him. Ethan nodded. "He'll come around." But I wasn't so sure. Julian didn't come home that night. Or the next. He texted once, said he was crashing at a friend's place for a few days, that he needed space, that he didn't know when or if he'd be back. I didn't reply. What could I say? Sorry I fell for your brother? Sorry I didn't tell you sooner? Those few days were the longest of my life. Ethan tried to be there for me, but we were both a little wrecked. We'd spent so long tiptoeing around the fallout that when it finally hit, it left us both shaken. On the third night, I found Ethan sitting on the floor of the living room, leaning against the couch with a beer in his hand. He looked exhausted. "I hate this," he said, not looking at me. "Me too." We should have told him. "I know." He turned to face me. "I don't regret it though. Not any of it." Neither did I. Even with everything unraveling, I didn't regret a second of it. That meant something. Maybe even everything. Julian came back 5 days later. I heard the door unlock while I was brushing my teeth. I froze, toothbrush in hand, listening to the sound of him kicking off his shoes like he used to, the low thud of his bag hitting the floor. He moved around the apartment like it was his again, like nothing had happened. But everything had. When I stepped into the kitchen, he was already there, drinking water straight from the jug like always. He glanced at me, jaw tense, eyes tired. "Hey," I said softly. "Hey." It hung there. Awkward, loaded, 1,000 things unsaid between two people who used to know everything about each other. "Julian, He cut me off. "Don't." I swallowed, nodded. "Okay." He set the jug down. "I've been thinking. A lot." I stayed quiet, let him talk. I was pissed. Still am, a little. Not because you and Ethan hooked up, but because you didn't tell me. Either of you. I opened my mouth, but again, he raised a hand. "I get it. I probably would have freaked out even earlier, but it still sucks. Finding out like that, feeling like the last to know." He looked at me then, really looked at me. "But I also know you, and I know you wouldn't do something unless it meant something." "It does," I said. "It really does." Julian sighed. "Yeah, I figured." We stood in silence again. This one's softer than before. Not healed, but starting. He took another sip of water, then gave me a look. "So, are you dating my brother now? Or is it just really passionate dishwashing sessions?" I blinked, then laughed. "I don't know. I mean, I want to." "Then tell him," he said. "Make it real. Otherwise, what was the point of blowing up our living situation?" I didn't expect that. "You're okay with this?" He shrugged. "I'm not gonna pretend it's not weird, but I've got one brother and one best friend, and if you make each other happy, I'm not gonna be the guy who stands in the way." My throat tightened. "Thanks. Just don't break his heart," he said, "because then I will kill you." Fair enough. Later that night, Ethan and I sat on the fire escape. It was cold, but neither of us cared. I told him everything. What Julian said, what I felt, what I wanted. "You serious about this?" he asked, his hand inching closer to mine. "I am if you are." He smiled, lacing our fingers together. I was never not serious. And just like that, we weren't hiding anymore. We still had things to figure out. There were awkward dinners, boundaries to redraw, conversations to have. But we weren't pretending. We were something now. Something real. Dating Ethan in the open was strange at first. Not in a bad way. Just in that way where suddenly the little things we used to do in secret, sitting too close, brushing fingers, stolen glances, were now out in the open, and we weren't sure how to exist without the hiding. Julian kept his distance those first few weeks. Not cold, just cautious. Like he was still trying to decide if he was okay with seeing us laugh together in the kitchen or hearing Ethan say, "Babe, where's the oat milk?" We tried to be low-key, respectful. But it turns out when you go from months of tension to finally being together, restraint isn't your strongest suit. One night, Julian came home to find us slow dancing in the living room. There was no music, just Ethan holding me like he'd been waiting a year or two. I thought Julian would roll his eyes and leave. Instead, he sighed, grabbed a beer, and said, "At least you're not doing it in the bathroom." Ethan looked at me and grinned. "Not yet." I kicked him under the couch. That was the turning point. After that, things started feeling normal again. The three of us found a new rhythm. The jokes came back. The late-night movie marathons. The group grocery runs. Only now, Ethan and I held hands in the cereal aisle and Julian didn't flinch. Ethan still left his socks everywhere. I still overthought everything. Julian still yelled at both of us for never replacing the Brita filter. Some things didn't change. But some things did. Like waking up with Ethan curled around me, sun on his face, his breath steady against my shoulder. Or the way he'd say "I love you," so casually, mid-conversation, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Because to him it was. One night, a few months in, we were lying in bed, the kind of tired that makes your body feel heavier in a good way. Ethan ran his fingers across my chest. Slow, thoughtful. "You ever think about how none of this was supposed to happen?" he asked. "All the time. And yet, here we are." I turned toward him, my hand finding his. "Yeah," I said. "Here we are." And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I felt home.